All right. Well, welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. I am one of your co hosts. I'm Dr. Joe Hamlett. Alongside me is my colleague, Dr. Dave Peltz. But if you're looking at the screen, you also see a third party to our podcast today. And we are very excited
Very excited.
to have Amanda Weck, who is one of my very good friends, one of our first listeners, one of our endorsers of the podcast. But she's also a very esteemed colleague as well and coworker. So we want to welcome Amanda Weck to the podcast. So welcome, Amanda.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I will just say, so yes, I am Amanda Weck. This is a fangirl moment for me. I do just want to say I probably bother Dr. Joe with the amount that I am publicizing the podcast, but I'm really committed to helping people with their own development. And just this resource that you both put out, where you are so vulnerable and you are so open and candid about your journey. I am constantly pointing people to this in their own, developmental journeys. So I am so grateful to be here with you both. Thank you for having me.
Well, you are very welcome. And the other thing I did not mention is, again, this is so appropriate that this is our 100th episode.
Whoop,
And
whoop.
what better way to celebrate than again to have Amanda on the
Absolutely.
podcast? So this is a treat for me as well because again we've known each other for a few years now, and it's always a pleasure to talk to her. So I thought uh, it would be very cool to have her come on the podcast because, like she said, she's in this journey as well as far as development, helping people. So I think she fits this scene very well. So with that, again, we want to thank you all for tuning in. Again, if this is your first time, you're in for a treat. Or if you've been a long time audience member, thanks for coming back. And so
Absolutely.
um, today, though, we're going to start off with just allowing Amanda to talk a little bit about herself. I mean, we introduced her, but I want her to kind of share with you, just in case you want to reach out to Amanda, because again, she's all about this development thing too.
Mhm.
So we want to give her that opportunity to help more people, like she just mentioned. So we'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about you, Amanda.
Sure. So again, excited to be here for 100. I am somebody who has had a very, I like this term, I heard this on a podcast, a squiggly career. I I immediately went into college, undergraduate, after high school, and I got a degree in psychology. And it was a degree of something I was interested in, not something that I had market tested to see how valuable that degree would be when I went out into the wild. It turned out it was not particularly marketable at that time. So, an undergraduate or a BA in psychology is really a great launch pad if you want to go forward and become a master's or a doctor. But it's really not like the degree people are seeking if they're looking to just kind of hire you right out of college. So I did what most people with a psychology degree did. I applied for jobs completely outside of my field, and I ended up landing in finance. And that was where I started this awareness that I had a real head heart connection to helping people understand things that they are scared of, things that they think are unapproachable, from, sort of things that had psychological validity in them, but basically more that emotional intelligence. So talking to people about their finances is really scary for them, and me being able to humanize was really helpful. I took that through kind of a career as a paralegal as well. And then I started in the diversity and inclusion and professional development space. And that's where I've been living for the past several years. It is just a wonderful opportunity for me to work with people in my professional and personal life to help them identify what it is they want to be when they grow up. I have asked that
Uh-oh, that's
question of
something that
people.
Joe and I have no clue about
So maybe you
still.
can
you
help
know,
Yeah,
us.
help us.
yep. And well, what I like is that I don't think there's an answer. I think it's more, what do I want to be right now? And do I feel like that's leading me somewhere else? because I don't believe that we have one singular career anymore. If the three of us are anything to base this on, I think we're all on a journey. And I want to help people figure out if there is a longer term part of their journey, let's get you there. And if there's not, let's make the most of today and help you really develop and learn more about yourself.
That's awesome.
Wow,
That's
that's
awesome.
very, very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like that approach that, you're saying, let's help you work on today, because we don't know what our tomorrow is, or what we're going to do when we grow up. So I really like that. Again, you're definitely a perfect match for this podcast, because you mentioned so many of the things we've talked about in 100, 99 episodes. You kind of summed it up in just a few sentences. So I guess
with
that's the end of the podcast.
Wow, great job, everyone.
but Dave, do you have anything for Amanda?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Can you give us kind of like a high level overview of some of the accomplishments or points throughout your career that have really stood out to you in a positive way? Maybe some things that you've overcome, or that you're just like, wow, I did that, and it's had such an impact on me because I didn't think I could do it, or I did it in a way that I wasn't sure about doing it.
Yeah,
For me, that's just waking up in the morning, but for
you are underselling your skills. Yeah, so in doing all the things that I've done, I think what stands out to me is less about any one thing I've done, but more about the fact that I have somehow worked my way into rooms with awesome people. I think the best thing any of us can do is be open to the unexpected. I have had some fantastic mentors. I have had some fantastic bosses. But what I will say is I had a particularly bad boss. And I was still able to learn something from that, because even somebody that you may not interpersonally get along with can teach you. And what I will say is the best feedback I ever got in life was by somebody I didn't particularly care for. And I think they had the freedom to tell me something I needed to hear without necessarily sparing my feelings. So I will pull back and say, I don't think it's one specific moment. It's been, at this point, 20 years of realizing that failures are just opportunities to learn and try again. That the people around me, no matter their level in an organization or what their job title is, I have something to teach me, and that I can still be respectful and work with people I don't interpersonally get along with. But that if I shut myself off to their opinions, I lose out on the opportunity to understand what my critics say. And honestly, they have good feedback sometimes.
That's awesome. That's really an awesome perspective.
Absolutely. That again, it's an alignment with so many things that we say on the podcast, because you're right. You have to view things as, what can I learn from this situation? What can I learn from this person? Like you said, even those people that you don't get along with, they can still offer you something, or they could provide you with something. And you said it early, in this last statement about opening your mind. That is just so powerful that again, as soon as you close it off, you shut it off, there's no room to grow. There's no room to develop. So I always say that, keeping your mind open to the possibilities, because you don't know, again, that comment somebody gave you, how that's gonna, show up later. That maybe you didn't accept it immediately, but you were open to it, and you listened to it, and you kind of stored it in the back of your mind. And that's the thing we talk about a lot on, is all those things that you have in your head. You may think that you've forgotten them, but they're there. And sometimes the challenge is recalling those things, but it's there. And so that's why you said it. Everybody can provide us with, some type of feedback or something that's going to help us down the road. We may not know it today. So I really like what you just said about just, being open.
Yeah. And I like how you were able to look past, and I'm not a big fan of negative feedback. It's, to me, it should be constructive. So you don't demean that person, because that can interfere with their personal development. So the fact that you said you were able to look past that and really focus in on those nuggets that's really important because I think a lot of times some feedback can be a little bit hurtful to people because it's not done in a respectful way. And it's almost like a little bit of that dripping faucet or poking the bear a little bit. And I don't think that's necessarily a good way to do things. There's always a time and a place, but generally speaking, the feedback should be positive or at least constructive
Yeah.
to encourage people to move forward. And I like the fact that you're able to recognize that and move beyond that, because some people, and myself included, have gotten stuck on that in the past. And it did take me a while to learn how to let that go and just focus on, is there something I can glean from this that can benefit me, whether it's what not to do or what to do better or what to keep doing. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that you're able to go there.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I do want to pick up what you're saying about feedback. I am a big believer that feedback is a gift. It's also a gift you can say return to sender on. I accept feedback when I genuinely think people have my best interest at heart and when they feel an investment in me.
Mm-hmm.
I did perceive this person was invested, and even if the method of delivery wasn't great, the message was important.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the litmus test that I used for myself, which is this meant in good faith? And are they invested in me? And that's how I try to give feedback as well. I think that if we look at like social media culture, so many of us just want to talk out there and comment and have something to say. But I really think what I put out there, I want it to be intentional and I want it to build people up, even if it's something that's critique. So I don't think you should just say, don't do this. I think you should say, have you considered? Is there another possible way?
Mm-hmm.
I've tried this approach in the past. It can still be received as critical. Sometimes it just hurts us to know that we're not doing something perfectly.
Right.
And, perfectionist here, struggling perfectionist. But I do encourage people to really think, is this hard for me to hear because it's hitting me in a spot I already know is sensitive, or because this person genuinely doesn't have my best interest at heart, and then take that path accordingly.
Yeah, I like what you said about the intentionality piece, Joe, and I've mentioned that several times, and that you hit the nail on the head, or the head on the nail, whatever, depending on your perspective. Bang your head against the nail. But I like where you went with that, because I believe it's a valid point. Some people provide feedback and they don't have our best interests at heart. They're competitive, overly competitive, or have, a nefarious intention behind things. And to be able to identify those people who maybe they are a little bit harsh or direct, but do have your back, or at least your best interest, or some vested interest in you, I think that's a very important distinction that you made.
So I have a question for you, Amanda. So when you're, maybe helping someone else understand that idea, so how do you approach that? I mean, again, because, the first thing when we hear negative feedback, it shuts us down. We don't want to hear anymore. Like you said, if it hits where we know already hurts. So what would be your recommendation, or how do you help people, maybe differentiate between, whether it's intentional, hurtful? What have you done to help people, maybe figure that out? Because I think that's very important, because a lot of times none of us want to hear that negative, but it's sometimes needed for you to move forward. So
that is a great question, Joe. I actually spend quite a bit of time coaching people about this topic. One of the first things we have to do is say to ourselves, and this is a question I ask people I'm coaching, is there a way they could have said this that you would have been open to hearing it?
Okay.
Because it challenges us to really think, is this just difficult feedback, or was it the way it was presented? Because those are two different scenarios. The first scenario, it's a lot more about self-discovery. And then we start talking about, okay, the core of a lot of our anger or immediate kind of displeasure with feedback is fear. We are afraid that we are invalid. We are afraid that we don't know enough. We're afraid we're going to be found out. And so we work through that self-awareness piece of, okay, what let's take this to the extreme. You get this feedback, you accept it. What is the worst possible outcome? And then we start talking about, okay, is that a rational outcome? Oftentimes, our immediate response to feedback is valid, it's emotional, and it's irrational. So I like to do what we call like taking the black box of emotions out, opening it up, and sort of saying, okay, we've got this emotion and it's leading to a thought. If we were to actually dive in though and see how that emotion's impacting that thought, do we like what's happening? And once we do that, we can say, oh, you know what, you're right. It's probably not rational to think because my boss said that I was a little bit wordy in this email that I'm going to lose my job. And we start working it backwards to, okay, what are some questions you could ask to get more information on that feedback? That is the key point, because frequently when our emotions go up, our listening goes down. Right. And we might need 2 or 3 cycles of hearing something before we can absorb the feedback. So it really is deciding, is this a user or sender error? And how can we bring some skill into either both of those parties? Sometimes I might actually go to the sender and say, hey, I heard you gave some feedback. I'd love to know what you were trying to convey, because I think I might be able to help us do some sort of translation service so that we're all working to listen and understand.
Okay. That's pretty awesome. I like how you're focusing on the different facets of communication and listening, the sending, the receiving, the interpretation. Again, Joe and I have touched on some of these things in the past, but to hear it coming from someone of your caliber, that's their passion. That is just that's an amazing feeling. It's validating for me. It's also making me think, wow, well, maybe I did interpret something different, or should have interpreted differently. I'm second guessing myself now. Well, maybe a little bit. But yeah, that's amazing how you put that.
Well,
can I ask you both something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know how you best receive feedback?
I don't get feedback.
And not well.
I don't get it, and I don't get it. I don't know what to do with it when I do. Well, for me, I'm open as long as it's communicated with respect. I'm open to it. Dave, your hair's funny, you dress funny, you look funny, you sound funny. It's like, okay, what are your suggestions? But if you come at me like, just in a very aggressive, negative manner, I'm probably gonna shut down, because to me that's not respectful. And to me, and what Joe and I talk about a lot is respecting and accepting people for who they are, and understanding that we're not all perfect. And you can do that and approach people in a respectful manner and still communicate, hey, Dave, you shouldn't be wearing that shirt. You should be wearing a 3-piece suit to this particular event, or something like that. Stop wearing, cutoffs to the meetings. So with flip-flops and tank tops, that's not the kind of meeting. We're not on the beach. I would get that. So when we talk about providing feedback and receiving it, Joe and I really try to focus on understanding things and communicating things from respect and acceptance. It doesn't mean you have to agree, and you can disagree, and you can do all those things in a respectful manner, but you need to be open to it. And that's me personally. I'm open to a lot of feedback. I tell my students, or the people that I'm in training sessions with, if you liked what I did, great. If you don't, then don't mention anything on my, no, I tell them, put it on there, because I'm always open to growth, because I know, I slip up sometimes, people slip up. Sometimes it's not intentional, and it's usually not. So try not to read too much negativity into the feedback, and just take it for what it is and see what you can glean from it.
So for me, I'm same way as far as open to feedback, because if somebody's approaching me and offering feedback, it's because I would think it's probably going to be that they want to help me, that they want me to be better. So I'm already open to that idea, because they've approached me, and they want to offer advice or some type of feedback that may help me. So I'm always going to be open to that, because again, if somebody's taking the time to provide that or want to provide that to me, then again, probably is for a good reason, not intentionally hurtful or anything like that, but more intentionally to assist me in some kind of way. So I'm typically open to that.
I love this. And if I can just kind of repeat back what I heard, Dr. Dave, you really enjoy when people provide you solution-based feedback. If you're going to tell me something you perceive as a deficiency, please make sure you have a solution. And Joe, yours is much more intentionality based, right? So Dr. Joe knows that if he's getting feedback, it's because we love him and we just want to help him continue to be awesome.
Right.
I would have people ask themselves that question, but really spend some time noodling on this and think about it. And is it, I'm a slow processor in that I like to read it first and then talk about it once I've been able to process internally. I'm a verbal processor. I like to talk through my feelings. I like to really explore things. So I need somebody who's prepared to really dig in verbally with me. Intentionality. Some of us grow up feeling like the feedback we got was all critical. And Dr. Dave mentioned this, right? That feeling that if what we've experienced is a pattern of negative feedback, we're not going to have any positive associations with receiving feedback because we don't know it as a tool for our development. So if you understand, again, it's that self-awareness, this critical self-reflection, as we bring that critical self-reflection about how we accept feedback and how we receive it, it helps us ask for feedback more clearly. And it helps us model the fact that we don't all receive it the same way. So if I am a leader, I can go to my team and say, I'd love to have some time to think about your feedback. If you are willing to, I'd love for you to give me feedback in writing. It allows me to process. I'll probably come back to you with some questions because your feedback is so important to me. I want to make sure I get the most value out of it.
Sure.
When we model that, we let other people see that it's okay to be imperfect and that we're all works in progress.
Yeah, Joe and I have talked about this in a few other episodes in the past, and that's and the military's kind of good at this. They say, okay, here's your feedback, or provide this to us, and you provide them that assignment, and they look at it and they go, this isn't right, fix it. And you're like, well, what's wrong with it? And it's just like they do that. It can happen 10, 12, 14, 50, 100 times. And you're just like, I think I've done everything possibly that could exist. I've changed the color of the font. I've changed the size. I've, used different parchment papers. I mean, what's not there? So, providing specific feedback is necessary for a lot of people. Whether it's positive or critical. It's kind of like saying, "Hey, Amanda, you did a great job today." You're like, "Great job at what? I showed up to work on time. You like my hair. I mean, what did you like about what I did today?" It's no different than saying, well, this isn't right, go back and fix it. Well, what's wrong with it? So it's that same sort of thing. It's be specific, have some examples to provide people with, because otherwise it's a guessing game. And in some cases that's a learning moment, and other times it's just, an exercise in silliness, I'm going to say, just to be politically correct.
No, clarity is definitely important because, like you said, you could state, give positive feedback, but you're not direct about it or not clarifying. So we may go through the day like, okay, what did they mean? Was that, like you said, my hair? Was it a job? What did I did today? Or what? Yeah. So being specific would help for people to understand, what type of feedback they're getting and for what reason. So I think that's important.
Yeah, it'd be kind of like taking your car to the shop and then they come back and say, yeah, there's something wrong with your car and it's going to cost you some money. And you're like, okay, what's wrong with it? And how much is it going to cost? Well, you need to figure that out. It's like, that's why I brought it to you. So, go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, so we talk about personal development and professional development. So, let's look at things from personal side. What is give us an example of one of the things that you've experienced on the personal side of your development throughout your career that's had a positive impact on you.
So this one is a little bit unique, but I love it because it's a personal into professional. Like many people, I planned a wedding and got married, and I did not realize that through doing something that so many of us do, that I was literally living the tenets of project management, but through this thing that I was responsible for paying for, doing all the planning, the vendor coordination. I threw my wedding in my backyard. So it really was this labor of love. And when I took that time to reflect back, it was so amazing to me how often we discount the things that we do just in our personal lives. And whether it's a wedding or whether it's being, the CEO of your own household, we have a lot of challenges and exciting things that go on. I think sometimes we don't translate those into saying, I'm much more skilled at some of these things that they need in the business world than I even let myself acknowledge. And I love the development both ways. I love taking things you can textually learn in business and applying them to your personal life. But I like the other part, especially for people in career transitions or returning to the workforce. Thinking about where do you have that skill and being really robust and saying, it's not context dependent. I have this skill. I could take this on the road and do it anywhere.
Absolutely. And Joe and I talk about that a lot too, as transferable skills and knowledge. And so, that further validates, why we're here doing what we're doing. So that I appreciate that a lot. That was awesome.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on, all the things that we do, like you said, we never really take the time to think about how they align with our professional. Again, all those things that you end up doing, we take for granted, and sometimes it's hard to articulate that to other people because we don't really understand how it relates to a business or to professional development. So I think that's why we always talk so much about critical self-reflection and really looking at the tools in your toolbox to see how they align with what you're currently doing or what you want to do in the future. So yeah, just having, that revelation you had about the project management skills, all the things that you really developed and weren't even aware that you were developing. And we do that so often that we don't even think about it. So it's funny because the other day I was helping high school students with resume writing. And so that's really kind of the same thing, helping them understand. So, one of the questions I asked them, if they've never had a job, have you ever shoveled snow for money? Have you ever had mowed lawns in your neighborhood for money? And then
Joe, I'm going to interject for just a moment. What is snow and what is lawns? I don't understand. I'm in
all
the
right,
desert.
Dave. You're lucky we're on the air. See, Amanda's kind of a side joke. He's been bugging me. We're in Kansas City, so
Yes,
our
it's
weather.
freezing. Yes.
And he even showed a video of his backyard, showing his pool. Yeah, and that's why I was like,
For shame.
I'm done with Dave.
No, it's just providing an opportunity.
So that's what that's all about. But yeah, but yeah, so that's kind of what I helped them understand. And so one of the young students raised their hand and says, "Well, I do hair." And I said, "Okay, did you get paid for doing someone's hair?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you can put on your resume that you have a small business. You had to open an account. You have to schedule appointments. You have to do all those things." And so kind of to your point, you're doing some of these things and until you really think about them, and see how they align. And so she walked away. Now she has, she's a small business owner. She's an entrepreneur that she can put on her resume. So it's just those things again that when we think about the whole of what we've accomplished, the things we've done, and how it pertains to either personal, professional setting or business. I mean, so I think that's very important that we, if we could do a better job of that, I mean, we would realize we are accomplished. We are equipped with so many tools in our toolbox that we don't even recognize or realize.
So can I build off that? I do a lot of resumes with people.
Yep.
And this is one of those things that I see over and over again. The things that we are the best at are the things we undersell in ourselves because they, for some reason, come easily to us.
Yep.
We make this erroneous error, in our heads that we say, if it's easy for us, it must be easy for everybody else.
Right. Yeah.
that prevents us from making sure we are putting our best talents front and center. So I really do, when I do that critical self-reflection, or when I'm asking others to, what I will say is, what do people say, gosh, you make this look so easy about? That could be your critical differentiator, but it's likely something you don't brag about because you
Right.
assume if it's easy for you, it's easy for everybody. Let me tell you, as somebody who is slightly under 5 foot, dunking a basketball is not easy for me, right? If I am somebody though who's like, oh yeah, I can dunk a basketball, no big deal. I'm not great at free throws. So the first thing I lead with is I'm not great at free throws. We tend to lead with the things we perceive as deficiencies. And I just would ask everybody to challenge themselves and say, especially when I have to write a resume, write a performance result, when I have to go brag about myself, when I'm writing my bio, think about the things that you do uniquely well and that people tell you you make look effortless. It is likely you are not utilizing a skill that you have a natural inclination towards.
Yeah.
And if we focus on that in our development, sometimes what we do is we go from being A to A plus, and that can be the thing that makes us an expert. That gets us the book, that gets us the speaking gig, that gets us the appointment. So again, feedback is important to understand where we might not be doing things as best as we can, but don't shut down when it's about things you're already doing well. Leverage those too.
That's great. That's
Well,
awesome.
and I had a good friend of mine who was a coach years ago. He, because I was trying to figure out, I wanted to coach people, and I was like, so how do I get started? What type of questions do I ask? And kind of to your point, one of the first questions he asks people when he's coaching them is, if you're not around, what is the one or two things that people say you do great? And I thought that, again, we go back to the feedback piece, that you're not aware, but like you said, it comes easy to you. You don't realize that other people recognizing that skill or those abilities that you have. So I thought that was very powerful. But it also comes with that caveat that you have to be willing to get that feedback. And so it's kind of what we've been talking about this whole time. And so, because some of it may not be positive, but I thought that was very powerful. That what people say when you're not around, what people brag about, the way they view you. So I thought that was very powerful to help you, like you said, identify those things that you do exceptionally well and don't recognize it yourself. So
Yeah. So just to keep us on track, we're down to about our last minute or two. Amanda, is there anything you'd like to leave our audience with?
I just would like to say thank you so much for having me. And I hope that if people are just checking you out for the first time, that they'll listen to the back catalog. We are at the start of a new year, but whatever point you are listening or watching to this at, it's not too late. We have all had those
absolutely.
squiggly careers. We have all had later starts in things. So invest in yourself, recognize there are people who are supporting you all over the place, and just really stay receptive to the people who are invested in you. They want you to succeed.
Wow.
Couldn't have said it
Thanks for
better
that,
myself.
Amanda. Yeah. So Dave, do you have any final thoughts or comments?
I would just like to thank Amanda for taking time out of her day to share her thoughts and experiences with us. That's really what the show's about, is, learning from each other and sharing these little nuggets and tidbits that, maybe it helps me, maybe it helps Joe, maybe it helps you, but
Yeah,
what we're really hoping for is that it helps other people that are out there. So I want to say thank you for taking time out and joining us, and really appreciate it and enjoyed our conversation.
absolutely. Yeah. So again, Amanda, we appreciate it, and I couldn't have asked for a better guest on our podcast. Well, representing this 100th
100th
episode.
episode. Yeah.
So that's again, thank you for everything you brought to the table today. I think, again, you gave me something to think about. I'm sure you gave Dave some things to think about, and hopefully, like you say, our audience out there, whether it's your first time or tuning in, or you've been a long time, audience member, thanks for tuning in. But if this type of information is helping you, and somebody else who might benefit from it, please feel free to share, because again, we're going to continue to do this. Hopefully we'll be saying, few years down the road, episode 500, 1,000, because again, we enjoy doing this, and again, we hopefully we can continue to bring more guests and share their journeys with us. So with that, again, we want to thank you all for tuning in to this episode. Hope you got something out of it. And I want to just throw out there too, we'll probably tag some of Amanda's information. So if you want to reach out to her, it'll be in the description. So I just don't want to miss that. But again, thank you for tuning in. And we want you to continue being your not so ordinary you.